What's going on, everybody? It is that time again, the Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 222 on this Wednesday, October the 29th, 2025. Josh Callaway, Collin Kennedy with you on a Wednesday, special edition, coming at you a day early. Some stuff going on tomorrow, just kind of fit into the schedule a little better to do this today. Collin and I were kind of planning out. It's like, we have plenty of stuff to talk about. Let's just hit it. Let's just do it on Wednesday. So We're coming at you a day early. We've got a lot of recruiting stuff to get into today. Oklahoma got a new commitment this week. We also have some portal stuff to dabble in a little bit. It's going to be that time of year as well.
Wild.
And we'll look into the weekend a little bit. Collin is out there in Nashville already. He's going to be with us in Knoxville for the Tennessee game on Saturday, Tom and I. And we'll be making our way, Tom and I, on Friday out there. But we'll get into that game a little bit. We'll look ahead to Saturday and what are some early expectations there as Oklahoma takes on Tennessee. And obviously, we say this every week at this point, but a huge game this weekend out in Knoxville. A reminder before we get started, getting too deep into it, you can subscribe to Sooners Illustrated at oklahoma.247sports.com. Use the promo code SoonersPod60, all one word if you're listening on pod. Get you 60% off a VIP membership for a year to Sooners Illustrated and the entire 24/7 Sports Network. Phenomenal value. That deal this season is starting to dwindle here, so take advantage while you still can. That's special for just our podcast listeners, so be sure to tune in and do that over at Sooners Illustrated. About to flip into November. Some big stuff coming up, signing day, all that good stuff on the horizon. So without further delay, let's get into it. We do have actually kind of a lot to get into on the recruiting side, which is what we typically do on these later week shows. We have our guy Collin Kennedy here. Let's start with the news of the week, which is Jahsiear Rogers, the Penn State wide receiver, 4-star composite from Middletown, Delaware product. A guy we've talked about the last couple of weeks, after Penn State fired James Franklin, this was a name that came up. He was in town for the Ole Miss game, and they got him. Collin, he flips earlier this week. Just talk about the addition of Rogers and what he brings to the table, and Oklahoma kind of striking here. I mean, we talked about it a little bit, Penn State, obviously, Florida. We're going to get to LSU a little bit later on. Like, these coach firings can work for you if you're Oklahoma, if you strike, and they struck here to get a really talented player away from Penn State after they make a coaching move. Jahsiear Rogers in the boat. Nice get here, it would seem, in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a little bit last week. Hey, man, it could always be worse. But at the same time, you got to give Oklahoma some props for capitalizing on some situations elsewhere and continuing to settle this 2026 class and putting some of the puzzle pieces together while there's uncertainty elsewhere. And Jahsiear Rogers, obviously, kind of at the center of it all. I think that for Oklahoma, as far as how this one kind of came together, I mean, once word got out that Penn State was going to go ahead and make a change, OU did examine the Nittany Lions class pretty thoroughly. But Jahsiear Rogers, man, I give OU a lot of credit for saying this is the number one guy we want in that group. And from the moment they identified Jahsiear Rogers as a player who could play for them, they prioritized this guy to the umpteenth degree. And it paid off. I mean, this guy gets to Norman on his official visit. The visit comes together like that. I mean, this thing got booked quick. He had visits lined up with Nebraska and Alabama the following weeks. We were also told that both Miami and Indiana, who, I mean, that's two more heavy hitters right now in college football, were very interested in Jahsiear. And he takes one trip to Norman and shuts it down. I was told he pretty much made his decision relatively early on during his time in Norman. Signed, sealed, delivered all of a sudden, right? Now, you got to obviously get to December. We're creeping up on signing day pretty quickly, but Oklahoma's ecstatic about this guy, Josh. Like, we'll break down the player a little bit here, but just I love the fact that Oklahoma identified a guy elsewhere in an uncertain situation and said, that's who we want. And for them to get it done with other major powers in the sport looming large, I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Fourth guy in the class at wide receiver. He's actually their fifth highest guy, period, if you go by the composite. So kind of get you an idea of what the addition is. I mean, he's a very highly touted guy, one of the higher ones in this class for Oklahoma. Obviously goes with Daniel Odom, who we've talked about a lot. He's been in the boat for a long time. Xavier Okofulaweze, who they got earlier this season, and then Braden Allen, who they flipped over from Tulane. How does he fit in just in terms of the type of player? We talk about all the time, especially with receiver. You don't just want 4 or 5 of the same dude. So how does he kind of fit in with the other guys in terms of just what he brings to the table and just this kind of group that Emmett Jones has put together here? And he may not be done. We'll talk about that in a minute. But this group of dudes, where he kind of fits in.
I think a big reason why Oklahoma was so adamant to go after this guy is he's such a complimentary piece. And surprisingly, I wrote it in the story that I put together whenever he committed. Even for someone who's going to inevitably make the transition from Delaware high school football to the SEC, this guy still has an incredibly high floor. And why I say all of that, in terms of complimentary piece, 2 things come to mind for me quickly. Number one, every single wide receiver in Oklahoma's class before Rodgers committed was 6'1" and above. They had a lot of perimeter type bodies. Braden Allen is someone who's versatile. I think could kick into the slot, but they didn't have kind of that 5'11" flex wide out, the positionless era football type who can do a lot of different stuff for you offensively. And so while Oklahoma had more of the perimeter types in like a Xavier Okafuluweze, Daniel Odom, obviously Braden Allen as well, this guy can feed off of them well while they man the outside. I think what Jahsiear Rodgers does at 5'11", 180 pounds, more your prototypical slot build, stocky a little bit. Sure. But I love the fact that he gets to his second gear so fast. I mean, you watch the tape and you're like, boom, he's out of the gate. And he excels with the ball in his hands, whether that's yards after catch situations or, maybe stuff out of the backfield, jet sweeps, all that stuff. And when you look at Ben Arbuckle's offense, what have we seen him incorporate a decent amount of? Some jet sweep looks with guys like Deion Burks, a lot of pre-snap motion stuff. He's not afraid to put guys into the backfield from the receiver position. And I think Jahsiear Rodgers, that's why Oklahoma likes him. He can do a lot of the stuff within this structure that is being asked of some of these receivers, and he can do it maybe a little bit better than some of the other commits that they have in the class. But at the same time, to kind of close it out, I love the fact that he has kind of the new age positionless football slot receiver skill set. But Josh, even though he's 5'11", 180, he's nicknamed Spider-Man. I mean, the guy can go up and get it. Yeah. He's got a catch radius that goes beyond what the frame would tell you or indicate, right? And so he's actually pretty solid in terms of contested catch, getting the ball. He's got soft hands. I really like this player, man. And Oklahoma did too. It's really easy to see why, for a number of different reasons, that they really wanted this guy part of this class.
Just seems like nice work. I mean, just again, taking advantage of an opportunity that presented itself that they probably didn't think was going to. I mean, nobody had James Franklin getting fired a month ago, and so this happens, and they moved quick. Like you said, they acted quick to get the visit on the board, and they got him into town, and now, boom, he's part of your class. And again, he's one of the higher rated guys in your class. And, it's funny because it wasn't that long ago, or, it was in the summer, we talked about on this show, wide receiver recruiting, what's kind of happening here. They don't have anyone. And now they've got 4 guys, and they may not be done. And it looks like a pretty darn good group to me, on paper. We'll see how it all shakes out down the road. But a nice group to be excited about if you're an Oklahoma fan who's kind of begging for those star wide receivers that we all got spoiled by for so long. And it feels like they're kind of missing right now. It feels like you've got a lot of candidates for that coming up, both young guys on the roster now, as well as obviously committed here in 2026. And on that note, I teased it already, but we'll go right into it. Potentially another one is Jayden Petit, a guy we have talked about on the show before. He's committed to Wisconsin right now. Luke Fickell, obviously still there. I don't know if anyone expects him to make it, into next year. Wisconsin is awful. Just shockingly bad, really. Luke Fickell's seat is definitely warm. Jayden Petit's a really good player. He's another composite 4-star. He's a Florida guy. So in the SEC footprint, if you will. Where does Oklahoma stand with him and maybe flipping him like they did Rodgers out of the Big Ten into their class and kind of, continuing to add to this wide receiver crop? He'd be the 5th guy if they were to do this. Where do things stand with him, and how realistic or likely possible is it that Oklahoma could flip another one here in Jayden Petit if they could do it?
Yeah, I think that this, you talk about some of the star power receiver that Oklahoma and the fan base is craving. Like, this is kind of why OU is still very much willing to go after someone like Jayden Petit, despite having 4 receiver commits now in 2026. They see legitimate star power in this guy, and it's not hard to see either. I mean, the guy has a ton of ability and potential at his size, his frame. And Oklahoma, I mean, this has arguably been one of, if not their top target at receiver for months now. Look, the visit went well, all that boilerplate stuff, the typical verbiage I could run through. Here's kind of the way that I perceive the situation currently. I think that, and I don't know, Josh, if you saw this or any Oklahoma fans out there saw this, I picked up on it the other day, and I found it relatively notable in relation to Jayden Petit specifically. There's kind of been like I'm not going to say a vote of confidence in Luke Fickell out at Wisconsin, because that'd be a little bit generous.
Yeah.
But I've seen a decent amount of buzz out there that Wisconsin might be contemplating whether it's more beneficial to move on from Luke Fickell and start from scratch, or there's apparently a lot of buzz out there in Madison about, okay, well, do you just dedicate more money to roster construction and rehabilitating that roster in order to get a hire that you were pretty high on early on, a better situation? I don't know that there's a right answer there. I don't think that they know the answer either right now, because I could very much see Fickell being gone by the end of the season. I could see Fickell at this point returning.
I'm also wondering too, like, would Fickell consider just jumping to another job if he could get one? One of those things, something that we've talked about with Shane Beamer before. Like, should he just jump to Vatech while he can, sort of a thing? You wonder if Fickell would consider that too, for the right job, being like, let me just start over with another Power 5 job while I can get it, because that feels possible too. But you're right. I mean, it's not a given that he's going to not be back at Wisconsin.
Right. And look, I don't know what the market is for that guy. I can't imagine it's all that sizable right now. But
no.
That also would lead you to believe, okay, well, Wisconsin, if you know that, or you get the sense of that, what are we doing here? But I don't know. I think that it's interesting because the Wisconsin fan base is at this point ready to say, let's move on from this guy. Let's go get somebody else. The buzz out of like the Wisconsin athletic side has seemed to indicate they're at least willing to consider keeping him around and dedicating more money instead of the buyout to putting that place together. And that applies to Petit. Why? Because in my opinion, Jayden Petit, and I caught up the other day for a little bit. You can see a brief note from him on our site. But basically, kind of the takeaway from that for me was, I don't know that Jayden Petit is necessarily in all that much of a rush, given the current situation at both Wisconsin and Oklahoma. If Jayden Petit believes or has the inclination that Luke Fickell is going to stick around and the staff that he committed to is going to be there entering next year, and on top of that, because they're sticking around, if he has reason to believe that Wisconsin is going to potentially be more willing to dedicate resources to support both him and the program, well, then maybe what he originally saw at Wisconsin gets furthered in terms of both the overall setup and his personal situation. We don't know the answers to these questions, but they're very real. And on top of that, Oklahoma is never not going to take this guy.
Yeah.
So I think if you're Petit, and this is really like putting the puzzle pieces together, you kind of have incentive to just let things play out, right? I mean, the December early signing period got bumped up, so we're pretty much a month away. You've got like 3-4 more weeks to work through all these different layers. Do you need to make a decision right away? I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do. I think that on one hand, I could see Jayden Petit choosing to go ahead and get the flip done, because I think Oklahoma has put in that much effort into Petit's recruitment. But at the same time, I could see him saying, well, I know that I basically have a spot on either side, and there's a lot of uncertainty with the program I'm currently committed to. Let's just see the way things play out. That's how I perceive this entire situation. It's a lot to work through, and I know it's a lot of hypotheticals, and I know that can be annoying. But I want to present all that information to everybody to basically say, when you work through it yourself, you're kind of like, I could see it in his shoes too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of layers to it, and I'm sure there's going to be some OU fans that are tuned in that are wondering, how attractive is Oklahoma right now for wide receivers, especially young guys right now can't get on the field for Oklahoma, and obviously offensively it's been a bit hit or miss. You may not realize what it is at Wisconsin right now. They're 2-6, obviously, but beyond that, it's offensively just an eyesore. I mean, their last 6 games. 14 points, 10 points, 10 points, 0 points, 0 points, 7 points. Oh, man. That's 7 total the last 3 weeks. 7 total the last 3 weeks. So, offensively, it is an abomination. I mean, you thought OU last year was bad. This is even worse than that right now. So, we'll see how things shake out with Petit. Obviously, it's not like Oklahoma's the only other option he has. He's a highly touted player. So, we'll see how it shakes out. But a key name to keep an eye on there. And that we will certainly be monitoring through the rest of the month of November, certainly, and maybe all the way up till signing day. Who knows, right? So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it.
I think to your point, to close this out, because I know I got asked this in the VIP chat today by one of our subscribers. Just like you're talking about, the offensive situation in Wisconsin has been abysmal, and there's we've talked about their schedule here on the show. There's no reason to believe it's going to get any better. If you had me put a percentage chance on it, like I would lean 60-40 in favor of Oklahoma flipping this guy when it's all said and done. Maybe a little bit more, like 65. But that's still like post-visit, high, recent trip aftermath. If they can push it across the finish line and the current trend plays out, I think the Sooners are generally in a really good spot with this guy.
Good to know. We'll keep an eye on it. Another big name there. Could be the 5th guy in that wide receiver class if they were to do it. So we'll keep an eye on that for sure. Should we dabble in a little bit of portal talk? We haven't done portal talk in a while.
How about that?
Why not? Oklahoma had a portal visitor this weekend. Collin, you reported it on, was that Friday night or Thursday night? Friday night, I think, that Oklahoma State tight end Josh Ford was going to be in Norman for the game on Saturday against Ole Miss. He was there. I saw him with my own 2 eyes. He's not hard to miss.
I was about to say, he's big.
Big dude, red hair. He's a big dude. He looks the part, to say the least. So he was there. He was at this game on Saturday against Ole Miss. Obviously, Collin, it seems like a natural fit all around. Oklahoma is devoid of next-level tight ends. Josh Ford's an Oklahoma kid. He's from Stillwater. So he probably, not to speak for him, I would think that staying in state would be attractive. And it's OU. Obviously there's a lot of attraction there, obviously, as well. Where are you at with this? Obviously, as Oklahoma looks to I would think this would be a position that you'd be active after this year. I don't know how many of these guys are going to be back next year that are in the tight end room now. Obviously, it's a position that's a weak spot. We knew it would be going into the year. It's playing out that way. They need more talent there, and this seems to be a natural fit. And like I said, kind of in every way. Where do things stand with this, though, as far as what are the chances it could actually happen that Oklahoma could flip this guy from Oklahoma State over to Norman and, insert him into things going into next spring? Because it would seem, at least with where the roster is currently, that he would be one of the top guys in the room immediately if you were able to add him.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, kind of to what you talked about, when I put the news out there, a friend of the show, George Stoya, quote tweeted it, confirming the report and basically said, hey, Oklahoma tight end, there's going to be activity there. And I can absolutely confirm that report as well. I think we all can, right? I mean, it's a serious position of need, man. And for a number of reasons. I mean, obviously the talent, some of the ability or the fit in that room right now is just not – it's not there. It's lackluster to a degree, even though Jaren Kanak has been really efficient as a receiver.
Sure.
But on top of that, go beyond the room. Oklahoma is still consistently running out 12 personnel in almost every single game. And, I mean, that to me is like – it's
crazy.
What's going on?
Yeah. No, it makes no sense. Yeah.
And And look, I get it. I mean, that's part of the system that they want to run. And I'm never going to tell you to not do what you want to do or what you believe in just because, maybe you have some question marks. That being said, if you know that the personnel can't get it done, but you want to run what you traditionally run, you go after guys. Aggressively, and that's kind of the case here with Josh Ford.
Sure.
Early in the week, I had heard behind the scenes that this was going to be a thing. But I played it carefully because the Oklahoma State to Oklahoma visit. There's a lot of tension there, obviously, for several reasons. But Josh Ford's agent was gracious enough to call me and say, hey, the Ford family is good to go with you guys putting this out. And off the heels of that conversation, they kind of gave me the lowdown of what's going to happen here. So according to them, this is from the party. This isn't my personal perception. Josh is, he was going to take this visit. It was an official visit in Norman, by the way. So he got in on Friday.
Yeah.
They told me he was going to stay Friday night, visit with the staff, go to the game Saturday, and then wrap things up on Sunday with some meetings. This was roughly the first, in their calculations, the first of roughly 4 visits, maybe 5 that they would like to take. He's obviously hearing a ton from other schools, as you would expect. Now, what that schedule was going to look like, they did not know at the back end of last week.
Mm-hmm.
They said they'd keep us updated, but basically what I'm trying to say is Oklahoma is going to be a contender, and they were going to get the first visit. And there's a lot to like here if you're OU, but at the same time, I'm expecting a pretty heated portal process if his trajectory or outlook stays on the current track. Now, what does Oklahoma have to its advantage?
Yeah.
What we talked about. They're running a lot of 12s. They're asking these guys to block, which Ford excels in as a 6'6", 265-pounder. But also, he's actually a pretty effective receiver. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's running the full route tree and he's burning it, downfield, but more of a traditional tight end receiver threat, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that the fit within this offense, playing in the SEC and also playing in state close to home, is all very enticing for someone like Josh Ford. What he has to work through. Do you want to deal with the Bedlam transfer dynamic? Do you see better fits elsewhere, knowing how coveted you are and how valuable true tight end talent can be in the transfer portal? Because let's be honest, it's pretty scarce, and the good ones get really valued. And then I think the final dynamic I'm keeping an eye on here, Josh, is do you want to go back? I found it interesting, and this was brought up to me by someone else, McLean Baxley, our Oklahoma State reporter. One of Josh Ford's former high school coaches at Stillwater High, so someone who would know the situation, basically put out there, hey, Josh Ford leaving Oklahoma State was not his personal decision.
Yeah.
We're talking about a guy who went to Stillwater High School, grew up an Oklahoma State fan, and went to OSU. And then apparently, for whatever reason, and I have not tried to touch the situation, was asked by the previous or current staff to make a change. That's a lot to unpack. But if Oklahoma State makes the right hire, I mean, there's every reason to believe they would have a shot to bring Josh Ford back into the fold. We don't know who's going to be at Oklahoma State right now. Obviously, we don't know the dynamics, and there's so much there. But what I'm trying to say is Ford has so many options on the table currently, one of them being going back home, that I don't think we're going to get much of a resolution on this situation anytime soon. I think Oklahoma's in a really good spot with him. I think OU has every reason to be optimistic for all the reasons I laid out. But at the same time, this is going to be a portal process that is kind of fascinating. And it may not be one that really even takes shape until we know who's going to be the next head coach at Oklahoma State.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's adding to it is that it's the end of like an era in that we're not going to have this anymore. In that they changed the rule this season, mid season, that when a coach gets fired, the portal window does not open immediately anymore. You have to wait until the next coach gets hired. So like all these Oklahoma State guys are in the portal, and nobody else is getting in the portal with them. So like they're the only ones. Not literally, but they're among the only ones that are in the portal at all, because all these other schools that have had guys get fired can't get in until the next guy gets hired. They changed that rule mid-season. Of course, that happened after Mike Gundy got fired, which Oklahoma State fans are upset about, and fairly so, because they got the raw end of that deal really all the way around. And so, we're not going to do this anymore as far as like in-season, because coaching hires never get made in-season. And then on the other side, again, there's just not – it's not like, oh, there's a bunch of Penn State and LSU players in the portal right now because those guys have to wait till the next guy gets hired. So it's just kind of there's a lot of weird dynamics with this. And that's why it makes sense that there's a lot of schools that are trying to get Josh in for visits and stuff because he's one of the only guys in the portal right now. So it makes sense. So it's interesting. And like you said, the possibility of him returning, there's a lot to this one, but like I said before, it's a match that makes a lot of sense on paper, and so we'll see if Oklahoma can make it happen down the road. And you would think if he steps in, he'd be right toward the top of your room pretty immediately. So,
I mean, to your point, Oklahoma is involved with Noah McKinney, the offensive lineman at Oklahoma State, and I'm pretty sure he's been playing.
He's finishing the season. Yeah, I think
it's crazy to me.
Yeah,
I still can't compute that.
Yeah. And again, there's still thing. Just, most people realize, but there's just the one window now too. There is no post-spring window. So like we're doing it all differently than we've kind of been doing it the last few years. So it's some different dynamics to kind of keep in mind as we do this stuff, because it's a little bit different than what we've been doing. So key name to keep an eye on there though, with Josh Ford, maybe joining Trace Ford and Kendall Daniels as one of these guys to make the move from Stillwater to Norman. It worked out pretty good for both those guys. Different position, defense, everything, but gives you an idea. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it. Some other recruiting stuff here, going back to the traditional high school recruiting. Couple last things before we look ahead to the weekend. Obviously, it was another big visit weekend. We talked about that going in with Oklahoma hosting Ole Miss. The weather didn't help, and obviously the early kickoff didn't help, but it was still a packed visitor list, and it was a great environment. Oklahoma lost the game, but it was awesome in there. Obviously, the third quarter on Friday especially was tremendous as from a crowd and environment standpoint. What were some things that you're hearing coming out of that weekend and some other notes that you maybe wanted to touch on here on the show coming out of that visit weekend? I know there was a lot of guys we talked about going in, and obviously same kind of deal. We're not going to rehash every name here, but for you, a couple of key notes and talking points coming out of the Ole Miss visit weekend.
Let's start with Taven Epps, the four-star 2027 Texas commit.
Yeah.
Who visited Oklahoma over the weekend. This is a West Coast guy, Stacy Ford, Oklahoma's director of player personnel and retainment. Been working hard here behind the scenes as usual, flexing those West Coast connections. And Taven Epps, from what I've been told, Epps and his family have a lot of trust in Stacy Ford, and they have rising trust in the likes of a Nate Dreiling, Brent Venables, Wes Goodwin, the linebacker situation at Oklahoma, and then some of the rising relationships in Norman are very enticing for someone like Epps and a talent like him. But at the same time, we're talking about someone who at 6'4", 220 pounds with a decent amount of versatility at his size. The system that Oklahoma runs is very interesting for him, considering the body type and skill set, right? So I think he had a great time in Norman. This is a guy for me that I'm going to be monitoring closely moving forward. I don't think anything's going to be happening anytime soon, but I think that Epps has really started to, after an early commitment to Texas, realize, okay, whether it's Oklahoma or any number of other options out there on the table for me, maybe it is in my best interest to explore other options and give these other schools their best shot at my recruitment. I think Oklahoma did an excellent job with Epps. I think that OU is now kind of towards the top of this thing with him.
Mm.
And I think as long as Oklahoma continues to play well defensively, they got to go win some games and right the ship and all that good stuff. But as long as OU puts the product on the field that they have defensively, for a guy like Epps and then the relationships that are there, there's a lot to like with what OU accomplished with the Texas commit over the weekend.
Yeah, very interesting name. We talked about him going in. Obviously, committed to Texas, always going to get your interest up a bit if you're an Oklahoma fan for sure. So, yeah, very interesting name there to keep an eye on, and certainly would be a huge, huge one if Oklahoma could find a way to actually get that done. Obviously, down the road here.
Yeah, last one I'll talk about is Crew Jones. We mentioned that four-star defensive end coming into town. Oklahoma was really excited to get him in Norman. We have heard from other folks across the country that it is very clear whenever people talk to Crew Jones that Oklahoma is arguably in best position here with his recruitment. I don't think anything necessarily changed. If anything, I think OU only furthered its standing over the weekend. And I think that on top of that, Oklahoma brought in Bodie Sparrow, who is a four-star safety from Utah as well, who plays 7-on-7 with Crew Jones. Those two got to take the trip together, hang out, experience Norman, all that stuff. And that, when you're experiencing something with a friend, that can only kind of add to the emotional layers of a trip. I think that Oklahoma, I don't know what Crew Jones' course of action is going to be. I know he has a number of other visits lined up, but it kind of feels like over the next few months, as he takes some more trips and then gets into the offseason, this could be a candidate for Oklahoma in terms of pressing hard, maybe even getting some good news whenever 2027 really steps up into the primary cycle. And the last thing I was going to say was what you were talking about. Oklahoma fans out there, I think a lot of you are asking or wondering, okay, what does that loss to Ole Miss mean for a lot of these guys that were in attendance?
Sure.
Individual outcomes really don't carry as much weight. I'm not going to say they don't matter. That'd be ridiculous. But I'm not going to say that they carry as much weight as maybe some perception. Because if that were the case, every time you lose a game, all of a sudden you're out of every recruitment in the building. And if you win a game like Michigan, okay, well, why did they not land 20 commitments out of the 100 plus?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Here's why I say that. Oklahoma fans, the same Oklahoma fans that are wondering what does the loss to Ole Miss mean for a lot of these guys, should pat themselves on the back. Why? Because one of the number one takeaways for almost every single recruit I've talked to after that Ole Miss game, even after a loss, was not about the loss. It was about the atmosphere that Oklahoma fans created. Almost every single prospect I've talked to has praised the environment.
It was great.
They saw on Saturday. And a lot of them did mention, hey, the fact that OU and the fan base at an 11 a.m. kick in the rain was that loud and that packed out was impressive. And I think that you talk about individual outcomes, but a lot of time it boils down to what is the environment that you're creating? What is the program atmosphere that you're building? And because that outweighs one individual game. Well, the reputation that Oklahoma has built, and in large part due to what the fan base has accomplished over the course of a lot of these home games, that was one of my other big notes coming out of the weekend. OU fans, if you're nervous about what that weekend looked like or whatever else, just know you are a primary reason why a lot of these recruits are still very high on Oklahoma, because what they saw on Saturday, in spite of a loss, really impressed a number of these guys.
Yeah, no, not to get on too much of a tangent or anything, but I really feel because it was a conversation for a while, in the back end of the 2010s and, just toward the end of the Big 12 of kind of OU home atmosphere kind of starting to lack a little. I feel like the fans have really responded to the SEC move really well. I think they've been reinvigorated by it, and some of the home crowds last 2 years are easily among the best that I've seen. I mean, think of Alabama last year, even Tennessee last year. Certainly the home games this year have all been awesome. In particular, obviously the two SEC games and then Michigan as well. OU fans have answered the bell really, really well the last couple of years, and they're starving. It hasn't been that long in the grand scheme of things, but they're starving for a winner, a big time winner. And I felt like that third quarter was just trying to just like will it to happen, like just trying to push him over that edge. And they got him in the lead, but so he couldn't maintain it. But a lot of recruiting momentum right now. Obviously, that 27 class is off to a great start. And Crew Jones, obviously, you mentioned, last week I think it was that he's kind of the Jake Crawl of this class a little bit. And there's a lot to be excited about. The direct. I know it's frustrating. I'm completely with you. It's frustrating. They can't seem to get over the hump in these close games. I'm 100% with you. But there's also still a lot to like, and that's kind of part of the maddening part of it is that there is a lot to be excited about the direction of things, but you want to see some more wins in those big games too. Another opportunity this weekend, obviously out there in Knoxville, which we'll get into in just a minute, but a lot to be excited about. Anyway, one last recruiting thing I wanted to ask you about, and then we'll look ahead to the weekend a little bit with the actual game. Oklahoma taking on Tennessee. We talked about this a lot with all these coach firings. We have another one here, another big one. LSU fired Brian Kelly on Sunday. Kind of crazy. Another huge job is now open. It's nuts. This keeps happening. I mean, Penn State, Florida. There's a lot of thought about maybe Auburn might open. Certainly, some thoughts of Florida State could potentially open. Like the jobs are huge right now that are open across college football. LSU certainly among the very biggest. Where does this impact Oklahoma? What are some flip candidate possibilities? And I'll go ahead and tee one up with the most obvious one being Peyton Houston. Does it change anything for him? They also fired the offensive coordinator, Joe Sloan. So it's not even just Brian Kelly, but they also fired OC there. You imagine it's going to be a totally new regime basically taking over wherever direction they go with it for the new coach. How does this impact Oklahoma? And again, Peyton Houston specifically, any chance there that Oklahoma could get back in the mix for a guy who was at the top of their quarterback board in 2027 for obviously a really long time?
All right, so you ready for a pretty wild theory that I've been working on?
Yes, always.
Although I don't know that it's all that wild considering the context we have. I think initially, in the immediate aftermath of Brian Kelly's firing, we all do what we all do, myself included very much so, where it's like, all right, there's a lot of change happening. Suddenly, a lot of the stuff we talked about previously is going to come right back up because those relationships did not go away, but the relationships that got those commitments sealed are set to fade, right?
Mm-hmm.
As time went on and I made some calls and I checked in with some folks, here's my theory. I think that in most cases, major college football brands suffer from head coaching changes. LSU might be the only one that is going to benefit from its head coaching firing.
Yeah, I could see that.
And a lot. Did you see they flipped a in-state player after BK got fired?
I did see that, yeah, and I was thinking that's not the direction this is supposed to go. Supposed to go the other way.
LSU is different, man. LSU recruits itself. And I think that LSU, under Brian Kelly, was getting a lot of guys in spite of him being the program leader.
Yeah. And the offense is terrible, too. I mean, the offense stinks.
And that's what I was going to say, too. In spite of not just BK, in spite of the fact that the offense was lackluster to bad, in spite of the fact that they had pretty awful losses at home over the course of his tenure. I mean, you go back and look and it's like, what are we doing? The fact that they were clearly disorganized, unprepared at times, for whatever reason, just could not win season openers. And it just, you hear rumors, you hear stories behind the scenes of some of the disorganization and even some of the discontent behind the scenes in Baton Rouge. And yet, and on top of that, I mean, BK just wasn't present at times, apparently. Well, LSU still got all these guys. Here's my thing with Peyton Houston. I think that Peyton Houston, I'll tell you right now, Peyton Houston, his camp have been in contact with Oklahoma since that LSU pledge. Like, that's been a thing. But I think that Peyton Houston, we talked about it, and I don't need to rehash every storyline, but we were talking about an in-state quarterback in the state of Louisiana, where it's really hard to pry guys away from, getting to go to the flagship university and football program that is LSU. What I think Peyton Houston now has, in terms of even more incentive to stick around, is that a staff that, and a head coach specifically, that just was not getting the most out of a place like LSU, a program that Peyton Houston takes a lot of pride in, right?
Mm-hmm.
That guy's gone. And there's every reason to believe LSU is about to go make a really good hire. And whenever that hire is finalized, I know there are individual storylines that would disprove this. But generally speaking, as someone who's covered recruiting, a new staff that comes in and has a highly touted quarterback already committed in-state with in-state connections and national connections like Peyton Houston does as an extremely vocal recruiter, there's a lot of reason you would want to keep that guy around, in theory. And so Peyton Houston, I mean, not only does BK getting fired, in my opinion, really not change much for him, it might better his setup at LSU moving forward. Now, nothing is guaranteed, but at the same time, I think Peyton Houston also knows, I've been talking to Oklahoma for weeks, if not months. Even when I committed to LSU, Oklahoma was still around. Oklahoma will still be there if I need to make a change. I committed to LSU for a lot of personal reasons. Now some of the professional questions are likely out the door. Let's see this thing through. And maybe I still get to go put on the Bayou Bengal uniform and play at a place that I've always wanted to play at, right? So, this is another one where it's like there's so much there. But in short, Peyton Houston went to LSU because it's LSU. And he is a state of Louisiana guy who wants to play for the program he cheered for growing up in state. Brian Kelly, in some ways, did not make LSU the LSU Peyton Houston committed to. But he's gone. So now if you're Peyton Houston, there's every reason to believe, hey, this might work out in my favor. And I think he knows that. And I think that Oklahoma's odds of a flip, whatever you want to call it, not all that strong in the immediate aftermath of this firing.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great point. I mean, there's a reason that before Brian Kelly, the last however many it was it 4 or 5 LSU coaches had won a national title there because it's easy to get players there. Simply put, I mean, they don't, it's just the program, the stadium, the state you're in. Obviously, we talk about the Louisiana kids all the time. It's a machine, and it's an extremely attractive job that's now open for someone. You have a pick for a coach who you think is going to end up taking that job? Is it more attractive than Florida? That's the debate on the streets these days. Is it a better job than Florida? I think it might be.
I think it is.
I think it probably is.
Like
anyone can win there, it seems.
I think if you are looking at it, you don't have to go much further than LSU is LSU. Florida, in the state of Florida alone, is not.
No, that's true.
Considered the number one blue blood.
And Florida's had a hard time getting it right, the last 15 years now.
I mean, LSU has had a coach win a national championship there every single year, almost, to your point, for a reason. And Florida has not made the college football playoff. So, I think Lane Kiffin's going to come up. I think Lane's going to have his hands full in terms of determining whether he wants to go to LSU, wants to go to Florida, he wants to stay at Ole Miss. I think Eli Drinkowitz is a sneaky candidate here.
Ooh.
I mean, let's just be honest. They needed another guy at LSU who's a little bit off the way Saban was in his own way and Les Miles was in his own way. At Orgeron, I think Drink. Marcus Freeman comes to mind for me as well, even though that Notre Dame. John Summerall
Notre
at
Dame
290.
again.
But you know what?
That
Marcus Freeman's Marcus Freeman, man.
Yeah.
I would love to see John Summerall. I'm a big John Summerall guy. The guy.
John Summerall's probably the safest hire, I feel like.
We're just podcasting here. Can I give you the guy that I think, there are two names that everyone's talking about. You make them say no if you're LSU. The guy that most in the public realm is Nick Saban. Everyone's saying, hey,
surely he's done. But, you do make him say no, for sure.
The guy for me where I'm like, hey, man, if you're LSU, like raise the prices of Raising Cane's chicken fingers and let's get this guy's agent on the phone. Dan Lanning?
Maybe.
I think he's staying at Oregon for the record.
I mean, if you're LSU, you feel like you can take a shot at anyone and have a chance. I mean,
right.
That's one of those jobs. It's one of those jobs, I
mean, we're talking about Dan Lanning. I'm very much an SEC guy to a degree, has a lot of connections in the Southeast from not only his time at Georgia or whatever else, Bama, but Memphis. Is this the job that he sees an opportunity to go to the SEC? I don't think he's going to leave Oregon. I'm just saying that would be like my really fun pipe dream of, oh my Lord, LSU just got that guy.
No, it's interesting. Well, one thing we do know is it won't be Lincoln Riley. He told us that already. He told us that 4 years ago.
Very true.
He's not going to be the next coach at LSU. So it's funny.
He's the next head coach at LSU this time around.
That's true.
Question.
He is the
master of
phrasing. On the boards again, the hot, the betting odds and stuff. But it's just like I'm transported back to 2021 when it gets kind of forgotten because of everything that happened after. But LSU was the buzz was Lincoln maybe going to jump to LSU, obviously, and we know what will happen after that. But I remember that Bedlam game where they lost and then he took the USC job the next day. They were playing Collin Baton Rouge at T-Boone Pickens that night. You were at that game, weren't you?
Yep, I was.
Yeah, they were playing Collin Baton Rouge. I mean, that was how much it was out there. So it's funny. 4 years later, here we are again. But
I mean, we talked about Peyton Houston and we went down that tangent, but to close out, there is a flip candidate that I am keeping an eye on here with Oklahoma quickly.
Sure.
You remember D'Anthony Lafayette, the edge rusher, 6'1", 200 pounds, took an official visit with Oklahoma over the summer. We at 24/7 Sports have confirmed that Lafayette and Oklahoma are in talks. Now, there are several other schools reaching out to him currently, and I put, a lot of this stuff I've talked about much more in depth and share more intel. So again, subscribe Sooners Pod 60 at Sooners Illustrated. But the interesting note that we've gathered is D'Anthony Lafayette not only talking to Oklahoma to a degree, his big thing right now is what is the status of Kevin Peoples, the LSU edge coach? And if something happens there, then D'Anthony Lafayette might be open for business. And if he's open for business, Oklahoma was towards the top of his recruitment. I mean, they very nearly closed on him a couple of times.
Yeah.
So I would keep an eye on D'Anthony Lafayette in LSU's class in 2026. I should specify.
Gotcha. No, good name to keep an eye on there. And it'll be interesting. We'll see if there's more firings. And this has been a very active year on this front, talking about firings. And it's been chaotic. It's been a chaotic season.
Does Auburn come up here pretty soon? I mean, it feels like half the SEC is going to come available. And I don't know how both Lane Kiffin and John Summerall are going to coach half the SEC next season.
Yeah, I know. It is not. And then obviously, I don't think it's going to happen. But there was also the reports of like Steve Sarkisian maybe interested in NFL jobs. Like it gets kind of crazy.
Do you buy that really quick? I don't buy that at all.
I don't know. Probably not. But
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, Sark is like, is he? He obviously jumped the NFL once. I mean, not as a head coach, but like, does he want to get to the end? Like, I don't know. I mean, he would have to. I don't know. It's interesting.
He was a coordinator for your Atlanta Falcons back in the day.
Yeah, it went poorly. It didn't go well.
He said it.
It's worked out for him since then, obviously. So we'll see. We shall see. As far as last thing, just looking ahead to this weekend, obviously, Collin's going to be out there. He's in Tennessee already. I'll be flying out there on Friday. Tom will do the same. This game is going to be insane. I'm really looking forward to it. I want to get your early thoughts here as we look ahead to the weekend a little bit. Again, I said earlier, every week, huge game. Oklahoma's season's kind of on the line here. as far as at least accomplishing their goals. You can still have a good season, but not the goals that you set out to if you lose this one. It's being billed as, and we'll talk about this more in the game preview, Tom and I, on Friday, but it's being billed as like a historic crowd. Like, I'm sure you've seen that a little bit too. Like, they're doing the black uniforms. It's a night game. There's a lot of talk around Tennessee circles of like, this is going to be as good as it's been in a while, right? And so I'm pumped to be out there. It's going to be really cool. Everyone who was on this beat in 2015 who went out there speaks extremely highly of it and what it was like then, and expecting more of the same this weekend. Some thoughts for you as far as the game, though, and really, I guess the obvious question is, what shot do you give Oklahoma to win this? Because they're not a big underdog, but going on the road and winning a game like this is just not something they've done, the last 4 years. So, what shot do you give them to do it?
So, I'll talk more about like my pick and the perception of the game whenever it's time for that. But just for me, looking at this game, I think Oklahoma. Like, obviously, Oklahoma has a chance, but I had to fill out our Know Your Foe piece for GoVols 24/7. Be sure to check them out this week. And basically, one of my answers sums it up, in my opinion, in terms of how you should look at this game. What kind of Oklahoma is going to show up on Saturday? Are we going to see the Oklahoma that started 5-0? Or are we going to see the Oklahoma team that has been 1-2 over the last 3? Because they look markedly different in terms of on-field ability. And not just in terms of like quality of play or talent, penalties, disciplinary issues, intensity. Like, I think that it really comes down to what Oklahoma shows up. That being said, if you're OU going into this game, and you guys will talk about it more, like, the name of the game for me is like, hold on to the ball, sustain drives, quiet the crowd, run the football, give Xavier Robinson the football.
Yes.
Get John Mateer maybe going downhill again. He's got to click for several reasons, but like, you've got to quiet that crowd. You have to move the chains because they're just not doing that at times. And once you kind of do that and you put some points on the board, even if it's field goals with Tate Sandell, because you can rely on him, I think that's another big thing for me is like, if Oklahoma doesn't go into this game and they don't sustain drives, and on top of everything we talk about, the crowd, the offense, whatever, if they don't give this defense a chance to catch its breath against this Tennessee offense, sign, seal, and deliver, you're done. So they got a shot. Don't get me wrong. Like, we talked about in the preseason, like this was one of those games where they could very much lose and maybe have a chance to win, depending on the way things look. They got a shot, but I'll talk about this more in a second. I'm not overly optimistic given what we've seen over the last few weeks.
Yeah, go ahead and give us your final score prediction for Saturday. How do you think it actually unfolds? Like I said, Oklahoma's not a huge underdog in the game, but it doesn't feel – it's just one of those things like we just haven't seen them win a game like this, under Brent Venables. Like, go on the road against a good team in this sort of environment and win. We just haven't seen it. Not that they can't. I'm with you. Like, I'll get my pick on Friday, but like I think they can win the game, but it seems like asking a lot to actually go do it. But where are you at with it? I'm trying to get the exact line here. I got 3 right now. 3.
To me, Tennessee -3 with push insurance built in it may be free money, man. I hate to phrase it like that, but it's like that seems alarmingly low. I thought it would be more 4 to 5.5.
Sure.
Look, in the preseason, we talked about it. My record prediction was 8-4.
Me too.
And we talked about how you can never in the preseason pick individual games in terms of wins and losses. You need to kind of look at like certain groups of games in terms of like clouds or clusters for wins and losses.
Yeah.
And you and I talked about it when we were talking about it. This stretch, like earlier on before the back end gauntlet, which now includes Tennessee, obviously, like you had to win maybe like Texas, South Carolina, or maybe Tennessee,
Before this season,
Texas.
we did a roundtable, all of us at Sooners Illustrated, and we picked the toughest game of the season. And I picked this one because I thought Knoxville, 5th game in 5 weeks, and also a lot of games away from Norman. Obviously, they went to Columbia, down in Dallas. Like they're kind of at the end of a stretch of playing a lot of big games in a row. So, yeah, it's just kind of tough.
I can't remember if I was with you. I may have picked Tennessee, but I think I also had Alabama circled.
I was the only one who said Tennessee, but I think Alabama was popular.
I think I picked Alabama.
Which is, not wrong. I mean, that game is looking tougher than this one. So
I know in one of the answers I had spotlighted this game because it was fascinating to me. And I thought, okay, does Tennessee – maybe that was one of the most intriguing games because I'm like, what does Joey Aguilar look like?
Yeah.
This is the Tennessee of old, man. Like – they're running it up. I mean, they're basically number one in almost every single offensive metric at times. Back to what I was saying, I had 8-4. I looked at this kind of cluster of games and said, you probably need to steal 1 or 2 to feel really good about getting 8. They got the South Carolina win on the road. They did not win at Texas, even though you can make the argument that really should have looked a lot different. I am not, for a lot of those reasons and more, overly optimistic about the odds here. Tennessee's rolling. They're a good football team that's confident, and they're feeding off of the atmosphere that they're creating, like you mentioned. Could be a historic crowd. And quickly, I lived here in Nashville. I have been around a lot of Tennessee fans. I lived here for about 2 years. I still love to tell the story of when Tennessee beat Alabama in Knoxville, and my apartment started shaking from all the activity downstairs, even though I lived in Nashville and not Knoxville. It's a tough place to go in and win, especially when you have the struggles that have shown up for Oklahoma. So I'm gonna pick Tennessee to win. I'm gonna go 31-23. I could see a few drives stalling out for Oklahoma and Tate Sandell kicking some field goals. We don't expect any rain or anything like that. I don't know about the wind situation, but I could see maybe OU running the ball, stalling out a little bit, kicking some field goals. But I think Tennessee, this offense is just – they're really good. And their defense is no slouch either. So tough task in that environment.
Yeah, I'm with you. We'll get into the game preview on Friday. That'll be Tom Green and myself. We'll kind of set the table for this one, but it's going to be fun. I am looking forward to it a lot. Like I said, we've been to 5 SEC places now, the last 2 years, and I fully expect this to be right toward the top of the best of what we've done so far. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. Collin's going to be out there with us. So it'll be Tom Green, myself, and Collin out there in Tennessee this weekend. It's going to be a blast. We'll have the game preview on Friday. Tom Green and myself to set the table, and then obviously full coverage all day from Knoxville on Saturday. But it's going to be a weekend. It's going to be a weekend out there in Tennessee. Looking forward to it quite a bit. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
All right, I'll pick you up at the airport.
Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing you.
I'll be there. Be there in a couple of days. All right, man. I think that's it. We'll be back again, Tom and I, on Friday for the game preview. Collin and I will have the instant reaction Saturday night, so we'll talk to you guys then. But that's it for now. We'll see you next time right back here. As always, for Collin Kennedy, I'm Josh Callaway signing off. See you next time here on Sooners Illustrated.
Safe travels.